Welcome to Tea, Tales, and Talks, where we talk about spooky things, drink some tea, and try not to get too scared. I'm Sarah, I'll be your host.
And I'm Mackenzie, I'll be your co-host.
For these strange and occasionally unsettling tales.
If you like spooky stuff, history, ghosts, ghouls, witches, and mysteries of this world and others, then Tea, Tales, and Talks might be the podcast for you. Join us for all the paranormal tea, haunted tales, and spooky talks. New episodes drop every Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
Until we meet again, our twitchy witchy friends, stay spooky and
don't let your tea get cold.
Research and recording of Canadian Creepies happens on the shared land and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. A key treaty governing this territory is the Dish with One Spoon Agreement. This treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee people binds them to share and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We all share the responsibility of ensuring the dish is never empty, meaning we must take care of the land and the creatures we share in it. Canadian Creepies covers true crime, dark history, and disturbing events. Some episodes may include graphic descriptions or sensitive subject matter. We do our best to handle every story with care and respect for those affected. That said, we sometimes use humor and sarcasm as a way to process heavy content, never to disrespect victims, survivors, or their families. Listener discretion is advised. We want to be transparent with our listeners. Canadian Creepies is currently a non-profit project. We don't make any money from the podcast. However, any revenue that is generated from this series will be donated entirely to payyourrent.ca. The only ad you'll hear in this series will be a message about payyourrent.ca itself. Payyourrent.ca is an Indigenous-led initiative that calls on settlers and non-Indigenous people in Canada to pay voluntary ongoing contributions, or rent, to the Indigenous nations whose lands they live on. The platform helps direct funds to specific Indigenous communities and organizations supporting sovereignty, self-determination, and vital community needs. We believe it's one small way to move beyond words toward meaningful action. Welcome to Canadian Creepies and to the sixth and final episode of our special series, Residential Schools, Erasure, Resistance, and Reckoning. I'm Valerie.
And I'm Amanda. Over the past 5 episodes, we have explored the creation of residential school systems, the lived experiences of Indigenous children, acts of resistance and survival, and the discoveries that have reshaped the national conversation.
In this final chapter, titled Beyond Apologies, Paths to Justice and Reparations, we look ahead. We begin with the limits of apologies and symbolic gestures, and the growing calls for full reparations, including the return of land and resources. We have also explored the power of Indigenous-led education and cultural revitalization, and what meaningful reconciliation actually looks like when defined by Indigenous voices, not institutions. And finally, we'll talk about the role of settlers, how we can move beyond listening and learning into action, solidarity, and long-term commitment to justice.
As always, take care while listening. This episode includes discussions of colonial violence, systemic injustice, and intergenerational trauma. Support resources are available in the show's notes.
Always resources in the show notes. Should we get right into it?
Let's.
Are these animals going to cooperate?
I doubt it.
Okay, Richard's going to his high place, and Daisy's going to be out of reach of him. Great.
Daisy's stalking.
She is. Okay, so let's talk about the limits of and symbolic gestures. Sorry, wow. Slow down. The limits of apologies and symbolic gestures. So the apologies themselves, context and content. We just have some subheadings here. I'm going to say them.
I dig it.
Okay. It's been dug. So the 2008 federal apology, which we've spoken about a few times, but on June 11th, 2008, Prime Minister Stephen Harper delivered a formal apology in the House of Commons to survivors of residential schools. He acknowledged that the policy of forced assimilation was wrong and caused profound harm. We now recognize that it was wrong to separate children from their homes and families. He does not sound like that.
No, I was going to say that's
I feel like
way
my
too
voice
masculine.
is deeper. The government of Canada sincerely apologizes and asks the forgiveness of the Aboriginal peoples of this country for failing them so profoundly. Apology not accepted. I'm not Indigenous, and I'm not speaking for anybody. While this apology was a significant public gesture and marked the beginning of Canada's official recognition of the harm caused by residential schools, many Indigenous leaders and survivors have pointed out the limitations of words without systemic change. Like anybody can be like, I'm sorry. Anybody can say, I'm sorry. You could just say it. You could just say, I'm sorry, but not actually be sorry. So the church's delayed and incomplete response, which we've also talked about, but we'll remind everyone again. The Catholic Church ran more than 60% of residential schools in Canada. While Pope Benedict XVI expressed sorrow in 2009, this was not considered an official apology.
Well, it's just sorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, it is sad, but what else?
Yeah. And
then?
And then. It wasn't until July 2022 that Pope Francis issued a formal apology during his visit to Canada. He called the role of the church in the residential school system a catastrophic error. However, many felt the apology was still lacking in concrete commitments to reparations, particularly regarding the Vatican's refusal to release full records or return Indigenous artifacts housed in the Vatican. With all the money that the church has, and we've said this 100 billion bajillion times, with all the money that the church has, you can't even give them some money?
It's the fucking Vatican.
Right?
You bring in that much in a day.
You can't even,
Through tourism.
Right? You can't even give them, you can't even pay some reparations? You can't even pay reparations. You won't even do the basic right thing to do and give them back their ancestors' artifacts. Ridiculous.
Which at the bare minimum.
Bare minimum. Super bare minimum. Pope Francis in July of 2022 said, "I humbly beg forgiveness for the evil committed by so many Christians against the Indigenous peoples." Various provincial governments, school boards, and religious denominations have issued apologies, but many of these are seen as symbolic when not accompanied by land return, funding, or material support for healing and revitalization. Mm-hmm. Also, churches probably I don't know if they're all connected, so I shouldn't speak to that. But it's
I think it's
you can.
It's kind of for context. My dad is super biblical.
Yeah, but he doesn't pay tithings. It's not like the
No, he doesn't follow a set denomination of religion. He's basically read the Bible more than most people say their own names.
Okay,
and he's like, this is how I interpret this passage, so this is how I'm going to live my life.
Right.
It's almost like Saint Latter-days meets Judaism.
Right. Okay.
So Sabbath is sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, and he won't even go to the store and buy milk because now you're forcing somebody else to work on the Sabbath and commit a sin for you.
Wow.
Pork is out.
All I do is work on the weekend.
Same.
All I do.
But there are technically 3 different categories of that follow the Abrahamic Bible or sects, which is Catholicism, Judaism, and Christianity. And Christianity and Catholicism are kind of
so wouldn't the money funnel to the same place? Doesn't it all funnel to the Vatican?
No. So the Jewish community and other Christian sectors
the Christianity and Catholicism. Would that all funnel to the...
No.
Okay.
Christian ones would be if Protestant, Anglican, they would all have their own
this is too much for
individual sector thingies.
Right.
The Vatican would just strictly be Catholicism.
Right.
Catholic churches.
Either way, I feel like individually churches have...
too much power?
Or
and
money. Yeah. It's
Control.
Can't you contribute to even your local friendship center?
Nope.
That's a very simple thing that a local church could do. would be like just give monthly to their friendship center.
It's all about them and their people. Even today, there was a charity event I tried to host for my sister was going through cancer treatments.
Yeah, I remember.
And the one church I had gone to rent out the hall because they were significantly cheaper than, I'm trying to run a charity event.
Yeah.
And they made me wait like 2 weeks before they were like, nope, sorry, you're not a part of our congregation, or we're going to focus on our own events. Fuck your cancer charity thing.
Yeah, fuck your sister's cancer charity. Like, what? Very holy. And it wasn't even very godly.
It wasn't even for my
Christian.
sister. It was for the place she was getting her treatments done.
Right?
Like, so they could, and she did all sorts of trials and stuff. So it was all about like putting towards money for research and stuff in general. It wasn't like it was going to my family or anything. Yeah. No.
Wow.
I was like, you guys are narrow-minded doesn't even begin.
Doesn't even. No. It's like if you turn like a piece of paper sideways.
Almost.
Like
You're
that
right.
narrow-minded.
Yeah.
So why aren't apologies enough? Apologies, though important for recognition, do not repair systemic harm or shift material conditions. I feel like we've referred to colonization as like a mean ex-boyfriend more than once.
We have.
So it's
especially
like,
last episode.
Yeah. So it's like, here we go again, back to the mean ex-boyfriend. If he's just saying, I'm sorry, or the mean ex-girlfriend, or the mean
partner.
Just the mean partner, the mean ex-partner.
Or friend even.
I love that. Or mean ex-friend. Fair, true. If they are apologizing but not changing their actions, it's the exact same thing.
It doesn't mean shit.
It doesn't mean shit. And this is the exact same thing that the Catholic Church is doing. It doesn't repair systemic harm or shift material conditions. For many survivors, apologies without action amount to a performative gesture to ease, settle, or guilt, a political tool to signal reconciliation without committing to justice, and a deflection from the need for land funding and power to be returned. Cindy Blackstock said, apologies don't bring our children back, they don't return our land, and they don't stop the trauma from being passed down. Cindy Blackstock was a Gitskin activist and executive director of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society.
We've talked about her before too.
Totally. Yep.
She's awesome.
She is awesome. Here are some examples of symbolism without substance. So Orange Shirt Day and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. While Orange Shirt Day on September 30th became a national statutory holiday in 2021, many Indigenous communities see it as largely symbolic, if not accompanied by concrete funding for mental health, language preservation, or land-based healing programs. Some provinces, like Ontario, chose not to make the day a paid holiday, further diminishing its potential impact. My lord.
Doug Ford.
Yeah. Doug Ford. He was a creep of the week. And empty land acknowledgements. So land acknowledgements, now we do a land before, we should comment on this. So I do a land acknowledgement before every single episode.
Yeah.
And because I don't feel like I have to explain myself.
Ask yourselves right now, as listeners, do you know the land that you are on right now? Do you know the tribes that exist in that area?
Yeah.
Educate yourselves.
Yes.
Calling you out.
Yeah. You're being called out. And as well, anyway. So land acknowledgements are statements made at events or in documents noting that one is on Indigenous land, and they are increasingly common. However, they are often criticized when they are made without understanding or sincerity. They are not connected to land back efforts or any form of restitution, and they allow institutions to feel they've done their part without changing systems of power. Anishinaabe scholar Hayden King said, if you're acknowledging this land is stolen but continuing to profit from it, you're just announcing your participation in the theft.
Called out again.
Straight up. Indigenous perspectives on what would be enough. Okay, so this is for everybody listening who should be listening. The Land Back movement is a call to return stewardship and ownership of traditional territories to Indigenous nations. Without land, there can be no cultural revival or sovereignty. Many see land return as the ultimate form of reparations. funding for community-led initiatives. So there are calls to fund Indigenous-run schools and language revitalization programs, cultural centers, land-based education, and trauma-informed therapy, and legal support for land claims and environmental protection, none of which sounds bad.
I would love
all.
to go to an Indigenous-run school. Like,
Imagine.
what the fuck do I need the Pythagorean theory for? Teach me what herbs I can eat off of the land.
Right?
Like, that's up my alley.
Thank you. Yes. Also, another Indigenous perspective on what would be enough would be the release of records in full transparency. So many religious and governmental institutions continue to withhold records that could confirm deaths and identities of missing children, aid in the search for unmarked graves, and provide closure to families.
Now, we've talked about this in some of the other episodes, but a big part of why they aren't giving them back is because a lot of them don't exist.
Yes.
They just didn't give a shit enough to care, like to
They
document
didn't,
it.
and they don't want to be held accountable to that.
Again, it's
Trying to save face.
It's a magician
Everyone's-
act.
Yeah.
Look over here so you don't see over here.
Exactly. Self-determination as well. This includes the right to define reconciliation on Indigenous terms, not the government's. It means that ending paternalistic policies and empowering Indigenous governance and law systems. And ongoing criticism of government inaction. Despite the 94 calls to action released by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2015, as of 2024, only 13 have been fully completed. Like, I still don't understand why the TRC Commission was, like, disbanded before all 94 calls to action were answered.
Like, it feels like your job isn't done.
Your job's not done. It just started. What do you mean?
Yeah, you're just getting started. Bring
Maybe
it back.
we should look into that.
Bring it back.
Bring it back. Several of the most urgent, like equitable funding for Indigenous children and record release, remain incomplete or ignored. So those are some of the calls to action that are incomplete or ignored. Senator Murray Sinclair, chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, said if the federal government had responded to the TRC's calls to action with the urgency of a national emergency, the landscape of this country would look very different today. So, the limits of apology. Apologies are only the beginning, not the end, of reconciliation. Symbolic gestures, no matter how well-intended, do not replace justice. Indigenous peoples have clearly articulated what they need: land return, reparations, transparency, cultural revitalization, and self-determination. And they have clearly articulated what they need to the point where I just had to research that. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have to, speak with any of my Indigenous friends to say, hey, what would... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're clearly outlined. That information is readily available.
Yeah.
Reconciliation without material change is not reconciliation. It's a performance.
Come here.
Straight up.
Call it what it is.
Call it what it is.
In context of Indigenous peoples in Canada, the legacy of residential schools and ongoing efforts towards justice and reconciliation, what are the reparations? So reparations are not apologies or symbolic actions. They are concrete measures of redress that aim to compensate for systemic harm, dispossession, and trauma. In the context of residential schools and settler colonialism in Canada, reparations refer to financial compensation, restoration of land and resource rights, support for cultural and language revitalization, investment in Indigenous-led services such as education, health, and housing, structural reform to address ongoing colonialism and discrimination. Eva Tuck, who is a Unangako scholar.
Nice. That was good.
I've tried really hard to
know,
nail
you're doing great.
these
You're doing great.
names. And even we've talked about this as well, but they talk a lot about their language being lost. And
Yes.
that is, I've done a lot of research on how to try and say the speak correctly, pronounce correctly when I'm saying their names. And that is something that constantly comes up in every word that I look up.
Nice.
Is that, yeah.
I love that you're doing that.
But Eva Tuck said, not to get off track, reconciliation without restitution is just white noise.
Straight up. That's my phrase for this episode. Straight up.
Straight up.
Yeah.
It's been dug.
I don't even drink.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
So, there is the background is there is a legacy of theft and assimilation. Residential schools were not isolated atrocities. They were part of a larger colonial system.
A grand master plan, even.
Yeah. What are we doing today, brain?
Yeah.
It was designed to sever Indigenous people from their lands, governance systems, cultures, and identities. There were over 150,000 Indigenous children that were taken from their families.
That's bonkers.
Like, I can't even picture what that would look like. It's so immense.
I can't even imagine 150,000 people in front of you.
There's more than 70% of land in Canada that is still held under Crown ownership, much of it taken without treaties. Why is the Crown still involved in our stuff anyways?
Yeah.
Like, just overall.
Yeah.
Residential schools were often located on or near stolen ground, funded by the extraction of wealth from those lands. Pam Palmater from the Micmac, she's a Micmac lawyer and professor. She said the theft of children went hand in hand with the theft of the land.
Yeah, because I guess there would have been like resources on that land.
Yeah.
Like
There's
minerals.
Which is why I don't understand why they still can't have clean drinking water.
Right. Give them clean drinking water.
Why is it hard?
Let them have it.
Financial compensation alone isn't enough. The Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement in 2006 was the largest class action settlement in Canadian history.
Wow.
And it included common experience payments to all survivors, independent assessment process, or IAP, for those who experienced abuse.
So all of them.
I mean, who are we excluding here?
Who wasn't abused?
And this also led to the creation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But many survivors have noted that the amounts were insufficient to address lifelong trauma. The process was bureaucratic and re-traumatizing. And intergenerational survivors, like the children and grandchildren of survivors, they're not eligible for compensation. And there has been no structural change that has come along with the money.
Yeah, here's some money. Why don't you get out of here? Like,
Payoffs.
why don't you clean yourself off and get out of here?
Yeah, they're trying to pay them off to shut them up.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it.
There is a survivor testimony from the CBC archives that says reparations mean more than cutting a check. They mean returning what was taken, our language, our children, and most of all, our land.
Yeah.
Give it back.
Give it back. It's not that hard. It's not as hard as like people think.
It's really not. We're going to get into that in this episode.
Yes, yes.
So why is land return central? A call to returning Indigenous land is at the heart of Indigenous-led justice movements. It is not symbolic. It is a foundation for self-determination. It is a requirement for cultural survival, a way to restore food sovereignty, economic independence, and spiritual practices, and a necessary reversal of colonial dispossession.
Yeah.
What does land return look like, you might ask? Outright return of Crown land to Indigenous governances. Unceded land is still under federal and provincial control.
Give it up.
Support for land purchases by Indigenous communities.
Help them out.
Shared stewardship or co-management agreements on traditional territories, parks, and waterways.
Right?
Clean fucking water.
Clean fucking water. Things we take for granted.
Exactly. Check your privileges.
I just sounded like my mom. Yeah, probably take that for granted.
Oh, God. There's also legal recognition of Indigenous laws and jurisdiction.
Yes.
The Black Land Manifesto, Land Back. I am dyslexic.
The Black Land Manifesto.
It's because I read back and land at the same time.
I know exactly how it happened. I've done that.
I just made a word out of the two. Land Back Manifesto from the Yellowhead Institute said, land back isn't a metaphor. It's a literal call to return land to the people it was taken from.
Straight up stolen.
The Yellowhead Institute is an Indigenous-led research center and outlines reparations as such: land restitution, returning and protecting Indigenous territories; financial compensation without strings attached; access to records, particularly schools, burials, and land records.
I want to talk about financial compensation with no strings attached for 1 sec.
Go for it.
I was listening to an episode of an episode of Canada Land, and it was about a MP or an an MP somewhere who was in charge of an Indigenous MP before they were an MP. They were working at a college.
Right.
And this college got issued a bunch of money specifically for Indigenous folks. And this person who was Indigenous themselves were like in charge, not personally, but they were like leading up a team of people to like write a questionnaire, basically filled with stereotypes. I don't even want to give you an example. But if you Google sort of what I'm saying, you'll find what I'm talking about. But so it was a questionnaire filled with stereotypes. And at the end, they were like, not even a lot of people got the money anyway. So it's like, where'd that money go? So it's even when corporations, different levels of government, businesses, any size of business, anybody, even when anybody is given money to to disperse those funds to Indigenous folks, they make it very hard for Indigenous folks to access those funds.
Which is what we call bullshit.
Which is why we say financial compensation with no strings attached.
Yeah. You're Indigenous, it's yours.
Have it, please. No worries.
Shut up and take the money.
Go away. But with the money in a good way.
Don't shut up. Sorry. I'm quoting Futurama.
We don't mean half of what we say.
I'm quoting Futurama.
Shut up and take my money.
Yes.
Okay.
Legal reform, which is recognizing Indigenous laws and jurisdictions, and institutional accountability. And this includes the churches and governments.
Yes.
Especially the churches.
Especially the churches and especially the government.
Stephen Harper.
Ugh.
Nay, I say nay.
No.
In their 2022 report, it states that reconciliation has stalled largely because Canada has refused to engage in meaningful reparations, especially the land return. From this report, the Yellowhead Institute says the government continues to resist the return of land and resources while pushing symbolic gestures as substitutes for structural change.
Wow.
There are barriers to full reparations and land return, such as federal resistance.
Number one, federal resistance.
Number one.
That's the hugest barrier. And it's not even like federal red tape. It's federal resistance.
Yeah, you're the ones making the laws.
Just fix it. Be better.
Change it.
Just do better.
The Crown claims ownership over vast tracts of land, including unceded territories, and often fights land claims in courts. Why?
Just stop doing that.
Resource extractions, economic interests such as mining, forestry, and pipelines, especially the pipelines, often take precedence over Indigenous land rights.
Wild.
There is public misunderstanding. Many settlers conflict land return with personal loss of property rather than understanding crowned land as the target of restitution. And church inaction. Religious institutes have been slower to release records, apologize meaningfully, and compensate for their own role in abuse. Which, just fucking do it already.
Not that hard.
Right?
Just do it.
Reparations must be Indigenous-led. True reparations must prioritize Indigenous agencies, not government controls. And this includes funding for Indigenous-run healing programs, schools, and infrastructure, respect for Indigenous governance and laws, and collaboration on what reparations look like tailored to each nation and context. Ryan Moran, who is the founding director of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, says, "You cannot have reconciliation if one side dictates the term. That is not healing. That's just more control."
It's true. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I see no lie.
You're going to eat this and you're going to like it. That's what that's like.
There are, beyond apologies towards injustice, reparations are not about guilt. They are about accountability and material justice. Land return is just a cornerstone of Indigenous sovereignty and healing. Survivors and communities have clearly articulated what is needed, and what's missing is the political will.
Yeah, hold your elected officials accountable. Mm-hmm. You can chat GPT a letter.
All about the ChatGPT letters.
All about it.
They will help you come up with all the political knowledge and jargon that you may not understand.
And if you need help, just send us an email. I'll help you.
We got you.
I'll help you.
We got you.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah. Until land, power, and resources are returned, reconciliation will remain symbolic.
If you send me something mean, I'll just block you.
Which is fair.
I had to say that.
Yeah.
I'll just block
Sad that we have to say that.
you. And you won't ruin my day because I won't even read everything you say. I'll just block you.
I will. And then I'll put you in a jar because I'm a witch.
We'll put you in a jar.
A survivor at the 2021 Temkulup's press conference said, "Give us back what you took. It's that simple, and then we can talk about healing."
Yeah. It's that simple. I love that. So Indigenous-led education and cultural revitalization, restoring what was restoring what was taken, reclaiming what was never lost. Residential schools were designed not just to assimilate Indigenous children, but to eliminate Indigenous knowledge systems, languages, and cultural identities. This process was explicit. Kill the Indian in the child was a government policy paraphrase commonly attributed to Duncan Campbell Scott, Deputy Superintendent of Indian Affairs from 1913 to 1932. And nobody named Duncan Campbell Scott should have ever been a deputy superintendent of anybody's affairs.
No. Keep them away from children.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Children were punished for speaking their languages, practicing their traditions, or engaging in any form of cultural expression. This created a massive generational disconnect and placed Indigenous languages, spiritual practices, and systems of knowledge at risk of extinction. Here's the role of Indigenous-led education today. Indigenous-led education is a form of resistance, resurgence, and reclamation. It prioritizes language revitalization, land-based learning, cultural knowledge transmission, elder and community-guided teaching models, and healing-centered and trauma-informed approaches. And what makes it different from colonial or Western schooling? It's rooted in relationships, kinship, and place. I love that.
It sounds way better than what we have.
Way
right
better
now.
than what we have.
Already. You haven't even gotten into the bulk of it.
Yeah. It uplifts oral tradition and intergenerational learning, which is like, I feel like so like as Western folk, we're so disconnected. Like when our relatives get old, we mostly don't have the time to take care of them. So we have to put them, and that's like no fault of our own. That's our society. But so we have to put them in our
fight back against the society.
Yeah, right.
Something needs
wouldn't
to
it be
change.
nice to have your like grandparents just with you? That's like how it was, or your parents with you when they get older, and just
Teaching
have
you
someone
shit.
teaching you stuff, and that just having someone like maybe not both your parents at the same time. That's a lot. But, you know, one parent, let's say one passes on and you have one comes to live with you or whatever it is. That could be nice. But maybe it's all of you living in a big mansion together. I'm just kidding. Okay. But what I'm saying is it would be like we're not supposed to be so disconnected from each other.
It takes a village was a saying for a reason.
Yeah. It uplifts oral tradition and intergenerational learning, which I said. It is community governed, not government imposed. And it centers worldviews often excluded from mainstream systems. Dr. Leanne Betta-Samosake Simpson, yes.
Yes.
She's a Michi Sagig Nishnabeg scholar. She said, they said, our languages and ceremonies hold knowledge systems that survived genocide. Reviving them is resistance. Yeah. Language revitalization is restoring the core of culture for Indigenous folks. There are over 70 distinct Indigenous languages in Canada. Many are critically endangered due to the deliberate policies of assimilation. The current initiatives are language nests, so preschool programs where children are immersed in their Indigenous language, elder-led language mentorship, university programs in Cree, Mohawk, Anishinaabe-Moan, Inuktitut, and more, and language apps and digital tools created by Indigenous developers, Tusa Langa and First Voices. An Anishinaabe student from a CBC interview said, "When I speak my language, I feel whole, like I'm speaking to the land, not just to people."
That's awesome.
Right? Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 14 specifically urges federal support for Indigenous language revitalization. Progress has been slow and underfunded.
Non-existent is more like it.
Yeah. Land-based learning is a return to the roots. Land is more than a setting. It is a teacher, a relative, and a source of knowledge. Land-based education involves traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK, hunting, fishing, and food sovereignty education, seasonal teachings connected to moon cycles and ceremonies, practices like hide tanning, medicine gathering, and canoe building. It supports physical, spiritual, and emotional healing, especially for youth disconnected from the land due to colonization and urban displacement. Katsi Tswakwas, Ellen Gabriel, a Mohawk activist and educator, said, "The land is our classroom, our textbook, and our therapy." Community-led schools and institutions. Many Indigenous nations are building their own school systems and systems based on their own philosophies. For example, the Mi'kmaq Kina Matinee in Nova Scotia is a Mi'kmaq-led education authority that reports higher graduation rates than the national average. The Kapapamachawaku Wandering Spirit School in Toronto, an Indigenous-focused public school with cultural integration. The Dechinta Center for Research and Learning in Northwest Territories is a land-based post-secondary program guided by elders. And Red Crow Community College, located on the Blood Reserve in Alberta, focuses on Nitsi Tapi values and knowledge. These institutions are reclaiming educational sovereignty, often with limited or no support from provincial ministries. They're just sisters are doing it for themselves.
Sisters are doing it for themselves.
And I don't think any Indigenous man would be offended because they love the matriarch. But I'm not assuming for everyone. Wow, I hate when I say things like that. We are not okay, so Elder Fred Sangris, a Yellowknife Dene from Yellowknives Dene First Nation, said, "We are not asking to be included in colonial education. We are rebuilding our own."
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
Take me with you.
Yes, we'll go with you.
Please take me with you. I don't want to be here anymore, Grandpa.
I don't like this timeline. Cultural revitalization beyond the classroom. Education doesn't just happen in schools. It happens in ceremony, in art, in community, and in every act of cultural restoration. Key elements of cultural revitalization include reclaiming ceremonies like sweat lodges, sun dances, and potlatches, once outlawed by the Indian Act.
I think that would be so much fun to go to a fucking sweat lodge.
Yeah. Right? I think we're allowed to go to a powwow.
Yeah, I think you have to be invited or included.
Yeah. But it would be cool.
It would be very cool.
Revival of traditional regalia, drumming, songs, and dances. Reconnection to traditional governance systems, teaching Indigenous laws and protocols, and rebuilding kinship structures disrupted by residential schools and the 60s scoop. Projects like the Indigenous Tattoo Revival Movement, cultural camps for youth at risk, and gatherings like the Moose Hide Campaign, Idle No More Teach-Ins, and powwows, all of these serve as living acts of resistance and reclamation. Sage Paul, an Indigenous designer and culture worker, said, "Our ancestors are watching us remember who we are." Despite all of this, they have challenges and they are underfunded. Despite their successes, Indigenous-led education efforts face ongoing barriers. There's chronic underfunding. On-reserve schools receive significantly less per student than provincial schools, which is wild. There's a lack of institutional support. Many cultural programs rely on volunteer labor or one-time grants. There's limited access in urban settings. Many Indigenous youth live off reserve and struggle to access cultural education. And there are policy gaps. While there is a broad language around reconciliation, governments are slow to return control or funding to Indigenous nations.
Why?
Well, just give it to them.
Yeah.
It's like, we know it's not that hard. What the TRC and Indigenous leaders call for. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to actions, they call for the ones that aren't done to be done.
Yeah.
But particularly numbers 7 through 12 and numbers 14 to 16 emphasize full funding for Indigenous-controlled education systems, restoration of language rights and teaching, integration of Indigenous knowledge and provincial curricula, when appropriate and community-led, resources for elders to transmit knowledge, and protection of Indigenous intellectual and cultural property. Marie Sinclair, the TRC chair, said, "Reconciliation means nothing if our children still learn in schools that exclude us." For real.
Yeah.
For real. Indigenous-led education is not a reform of Western systems. It is a resurgence of Indigenous worldviews and sovereignty. It heals the intergenerational wounds of residential schools by reconnecting youth to the language, culture, and land. Despite the vision and effort of Indigenous communities, real barriers remain, largely due to funding inequities and systemic colonialism. Reconciliation must include funding, support, and autonomy for Indigenous peoples to educate their youth and revitalize their cultures on their own terms. An Indigenous educator from the Ontario Chiefs of Education Gathering said, "Our kids survived the schools, now they deserve to thrive in ours." Let's take a moment during this break to talk about something that matters, something that doesn't get to be background noise. The Anishinaabe-Moan word, Ni-ki-na-gana, means we are all related, and we are. But relationship isn't just about words, it's about responsibility. Canadian author Naomi Klein once said, "It is not enough to say that we live on Indigenous land. We have to act as if we do." And one way to do that is by supporting Pay Your Rent, a grassroots mutual aid initiative that offers direct material support to Indigenous organizers across this land. It's not charity, it's rent. For those of us who aren't Indigenous to this place, it's a way to show up differently, to redistribute some of what's been taken. The Pay Your Rent Fund started as a one-time request for help in 2018 and grew into a nonprofit called Ni-ki-na-gana. Your monthly or one-time donation can help provide food, hygiene supplies, housing support, and resources for Indigenous-led resistance and community care. So if you've ever said, "We're all related," ask yourself, are you being a good relative? Visit payyourrent.ca and find out more about how you can be part of something better. Now, back to this case.
As they should.
As they should.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. I would like to thrive in one of those schools.
Yeah.
I stand on that.
Right.
What meaningful reconciliation looks like from Indigenous perspectives. This section will address how Indigenous leaders, scholars, elders, and communities across Canada define real reconciliation, moving beyond political slogans and into tangible justice, healing, and nation-to-nation relationships. Why the term reconciliation is contested. Reconciliation has become a widely used word in Canadian public discourse, especially since the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's final reports in 2015. But many Indigenous people are skeptical or outright critical of how the term is used. Tanya Talaga, who is an Anishinaabe author, journalist, following the discovery of the graves in 2021, had said, "Reconciliation is dead. It died when they found the children."
Yeah.
I mean...
What else do you say? Correct.
I find no argument there. You're not wrong. Many Indigenous thinkers argue that reconciliation is currently used often for it centers on settlers' comfort rather than Indigenous justice. It focuses on healing relationships without addressing land, power, or accountability, is used to evade deeper structural changes, and is premature. You can't reconcile with a nation that that's still actively harming you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Truth before reconciliation. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission emphasized that truth-telling must come first. For many Indigenous people, the truth remains unheard, ignored, and denied. Murray Sinclair also has said, you cannot have reconciliation until there is truth. And we are still not telling the whole truth in this country. What this would mean is, or look like, would be acknowledging genocide, not just as a tragedy or cultural loss, teaching the real history of residential schools and colonialism in schools. And even that's like, until this podcast, I had no idea why Orange Shirt Day existed.
Yeah.
Why is that not widely?
Shouldn't that just be
No.
taught? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That should be common knowledge if you live in Canada.
Yeah. We should just know it.
Listening to survivor testimonies without judgment or dilution, and recognizing that colonialism is still ongoing. It's not just historical, it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
One of the clearest and most repeated calls from Indigenous communities is returning of the land and control over resources. The Yellowhead Institute's Red Paper Cashback from 2021 said, land is not a metaphor. Reconciliation that does not include land back is performative.
Yeah.
This would be returning unceded Crown lands, respecting Indigenous land titles and treaties, ending extractive projects on Indigenous land without consent, supporting Indigenous stewardship governances, and rematriation.
Rematriation.
Thank you. Of the land. Reconciliation must involve a recognition of Indigenous sovereignty, not assimilation or inclusion with colonial systems. Indigenous nations are not stakeholders. They are nations with rights, laws, and governments. Respect for Indigenous laws, justice systems, and governance models. Ending patronistic legislations like paternalistic.
Yeah.
I mean,
they
it
like
is patronizing.
Yeah, that's straight up. Yeah.
Such as the Indian Act we mentioned earlier.
The Indian Act legislation is still a thing? They haven't even ended that?
You know what? My
can't.
therapist is actually reading a book. I talked about this with my therapist yesterday.
Nice. I love that.
And she was reading a book on it as well. And she's like, Jesus Christ.
I know. Is she going to listen?
She might. I don't know. There's a barrier there between like I know she doesn't listen to Down the Crooked Path.
Oh.
And we've kind of discussed that it kind of, like, she's not my friend. She's my therapist.
Right.
So.
Okay, yeah. They're like, but listen. They're like, but Queen, it's so good.
Support. Learn.
Yeah. Just put on the background.
Right?
I
lost my place there. Yeah. So free, prior, and informed consent, or FPIC, for all decisions of that are afflicting Indigenous lands and peoples. We don't want seats at your table. We want our own tables built on our terms. And Kaktiks Nugtaks Ellen Gabriel from the Mohawk activist is the one who said that quote. True reconciliation comes with material redress for what was taken and broken. This includes full
implementation.
Thank you. I'm very tongue-tied today.
That's okay.
Of the TRC's 94 calls to action.
Just do like all of them this year. Just finish them up. Just knock them off the list. You know how good it feels to check things off a list?
Right?
It feels so good.
Right?
Just get it done.
Or, just
Try.
just disperse it. Direct. Give
Delegate.
yes, thank you. Delegate. Bob over in accounting can do this one, and
Celia will do the other one.
for education.
Just get the paperwork going.
Right?
Fill it out.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
That's right.
Comprehensive support for language and cultural revitalization, compensation for the intergenerational impact of residential schools, the 60s scoop and land theft, and institutional accountability from churches, universities, police, and the government. Ryan Moran has said, apologies are not reconciliation. Healing requires repair.
Yeah.
I mean, if you break your arm and the doctor's like, sorry, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
Right, here's the bill.
Sorry.
Survivors-centered healing is important. Reconciliation must honor and support survivors of residential schools and their families and intergenerational descendants. And this would mean having accessible trauma-informed mental health services that are led by Indigenous professionals.
Yeah.
I can't speak on this, so what am I going to do to help you with those mental health issues that have come out of this?
Yeah.
It makes sense. Community-run healing programs grounded in ceremony and culture. Memorialization of the children who never came home, including monuments, education, and sacred spaces.
Yes.
We shouldn't touch these spaces.
Yeah. We can look. Don't touch.
No touchy. Anonymous elder from the Assembly of the First Nations Gathering has said, reconciliation is when survivors feel safe and respected in this country. Most don't. Many Indigenous thinkers emphasize that reconciliation requires deep, uncomfortable work by non-Indigenous Canadians, including learning the real history of colonization and residential schools, challenging racism and white supremacy in your community, listening without defensiveness, supporting Indigenous initiatives without trying to lead them.
Or colonize them.
I mean...
Just show up and do what they say.
Right? And redistributing resources, land, and opportunities. Chelsea Valls, who's a Métis writer and educator, has said reconciliation is not about making settlers feel better. It's about making things right.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
It's not about you or me.
Rebuilding relationships, but not on colonial terms, is central to many Indigenous worldviews. But that doesn't mean reconciliation is about returning to harmony without addressing power imbalance. Instead, relationships mean accountability, consent, respect for autonomy, and ongoing ongoing lived actions, not just a one-time gesture. Sylvia McAdams, who is the co-founder of Indie No More, has said, we don't need hugs and handshakes. We need treaties honored and justice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, a handshake and a hug isn't going to fix your broken arm.
That's right.
So what does reconciliation mean when defined by Indigenous people? So it's a little bit of a comparison between settlers' government definition and Indigenous. When settler governments say have symbolic gestures, Indigenous people want material restitution and power shifts. When they give one-time apologies, Indigenous perspectives want ongoing accountability and truth-telling. Instead of inclusions in colonial systems, they want respect for Indigenous self-determination. When we talk about cultural programs, they are talking about land return, legal reform, and language rights. And moving forward together to them means structural change that reflects Indigenous rights.
Yeah.
Cindy Blackstock.
I love Cindy Blackstock. Back again.
Our girl,
Cindy Blackstock.
She has said if reconciliation is to mean anything, it must be transformative. Otherwise, it's just a mask on the same system that harmed us.
Yeah.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
I see no lie.
I see no lie. Okay, now it's time to talk about us, the settlers.
We got some shit to do, guys.
We have some stuff to do. The role of settlers. So we can listen. Listening to this podcast is a good start. Learning and acting. From passive allyship to active solidarity. This section explores the responsibilities of settlers, non-Indigenous people living on Indigenous land, in the process of truth, reconciliation, and justice. It focuses on how settlers can meaningfully participate in dismantling colonial systems, supporting Indigenous sovereignty, and transforming relationships. In the Canadian context, a settler refers to anyone whose presence on this land is a result of colonial displacement of Indigenous peoples, whether your family arrived generations ago from Europe or more recently through immigration. Chelsea Vowell said, if you're not Indigenous to this land, then you have benefited from a system built on Indigenous dispossession. This makes you a settler. It's not a slur, it's a responsibility. Settler identity includes white Canadians, immigrants and refugees from all backgrounds, and people who may not see themselves as complicit but still live within and benefit from colonial systems. Listening means bearing witness to Indigenous, or I guess I should title this. So this is how we're going to learn the truth without centering ourselves. And that's really hard for us to do. It's hard for us to not center ourselves, but we cannot do it. So listening means bearing witness to Indigenous testimony and experience without interruption or deflection. It also means sitting with discomfort, especially when learning about genocide, erasure, and your own place within it. You don't need to rush to fix or explain literally anything. It's not your job. Don't rush or explain anything. Just listen. And also not asking Indigenous peoples to educate you on demand. There is enough research out there that you can Google things.
Yeah.
You can Google things. And I'm sure like there are content creators who probably love fielding questions.
Yeah.
You know, just don't leave it up to
Your friend.
Your
neighbor.
Or your neighbor. Or
coworker.
Or the person you have on Facebook. Tanya Talaga, who we also love, an Anishinaabe journalist, said, listening means holding space for grief and rage without needing to be forgiven. If an Indigenous person is telling you something that's making you feel uncomfortable, that's like not attacking you and it's talking about their own experience, just sit with that discomfort. I know it doesn't feel good, but guess what? It's you're not supposed to feel good all the time.
And how do you think they feel?
Yeah. And you're not meant to navigate your discomfort immediately in that moment. Sit with it. Just let it resonate. Too often, settlers want to skip the solution or offer sympathy without reflection. Listening deeply is an act of humility and a starting point, not an end point. And let's take responsibility for our own education. Learning includes studying the history of colonization, residential schools, the Indian Act, treaties, and Indigenous resistance. Following Indigenous scholars, journalists, elders, and activists, reading Indigenous-authored books, watching documentaries, and supporting Indigenous-led podcasts and media. Understanding your local Indigenous nations, treaties, and current issues where you live. Samantha Knock, a Métis writer, said, if you're serious about reconciliation, your learning will never be done. This work is ongoing, non-performative, and should be done without expecting praise or recognition.
Yeah. You don't do something for the praise or to be patted on the head. You do something because you genuinely give a shit.
Right.
You care.
Do something and don't expect anything from anyone.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just do it because it's the right fucking thing to do.
You can do things without expecting something in return.
Exactly. And you know what? In case nobody's told you in this life, you're not owed shit.
Yeah.
You're not owed shit. And one more thing, you can't take it with you. So let's move beyond awareness and into material change. Awareness is not enough. The next step is taking real world action, redistributing power, wealth, and attention to Indigenous communities and movements. Here are some ways settlers can act. We can support land back and Indigenous sovereignty, advocate for land back policies such as return of crowned land, co-governance, or conservation leadership, defend Indigenous land protectors, for example, the Wet'suwet'en we've talked about, and 1492 Land Back Lane. Oppose development projects on unceded Indigenous land. If you, in the Land Back Manifesto from the Yellowhead Institute, said, if you're on Indigenous land and you know it, what are you doing about it?
Fair question.
Something else you can do is donate to pay your rent. Support initiatives like payyourrent.ca or direct monthly contributions to Indigenous nations. It can be like $5.
Yeah.
You can do $5 a month. Easy peasy for $5. Fund Indigenous-led. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Maybe $5 a month isn't easy peasy. If you have over $500 in your bank account right now, you can donate $5 a month, I think. If you have below $500 in your bank account right now, I don't think it's. But I'm not a foot in my mouth, But I'm trying to give people like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, 500. It's rent's coming up. Perspective. You know, but if you have more than that, you're feeling okay. You're feeling good. Throw an extra $5 in.
And you know what? Sometimes there have been days where even like I feel like crap. And I'm like, you know what? I need to pay it forward.
Yeah, pay it forward. Yeah.
So like just buy somebody in the line behind me at Tim Hortons their coffee. And then I'm like, oh, I feel so good for the rest of the day. Like treating yourself by treating someone else.
Yeah, exactly. You can also fund Indigenous healing centers, education programs, and language initiatives. And you can support GoFundMe campaigns for land purchases, powwow regalia, or cultural survival programs. Because that powwow regalia is expensive, from what I know. Mm-hmm. You can also use your position and platform. Amplify Indigenous voices, not by speaking for them, but by sharing, supporting, and stepping back. Talk to family, coworkers, and your community about reconciliation and systemic change. And challenge anti-Indigenous racism and erasure in your workplace, school board, or organization. Indigenous Action, a grassroots collective, said, ally is a verb. If you're not doing anything, then you're not one. Mm-hmm. And because we've given you some things to do, here are some things to not do. Here are some common pitfalls for settlers to avoid. Performative allyship, so social media posts or symbolic gestures without action. Don't fucking donate to somewhere and then do a social media post about it.
Or share posts about it without actually donating. So there's a big thing, like especially breast cancer awareness month.
Yeah, just
when people
if you haven't donated, don't share.
Yeah, yeah. And when people are like, oh, what color bra? Like there was that whole thing a couple years back where it was like, just post the color of your bra in Facebook and it's all for breast cancer awareness. And I'm like, fucking donate. Yeah. Like, what is this doing to help?
Donate. Just put $5 in.
Yeah.
$5. Another pitfall we can avoid is white saviorism. We love that. We love trying to lead or fix Indigenous struggles without invitation. Just don't do that. Also, centering your own emotions of guilt, shame, or trauma that takes up space meant for Indigenous voices. Demanding forgiveness or absolution. Please do not do that. Reconciliation is not about personal redemption and tokenism, including Indigenous perspectives only when convenient or for optics. Don't do that. Mm-hmm. Hayden King, an Anishinaabe scholar at Ryerson University, said if your version of reconciliation doesn't make you give anything up, it's not reconciliation. Here's what Indigenous leaders are acting of settlers. Show up consistently, especially when the news cycle moves on. Educate yourselves and then help educate others. Support nation-to-nation relationships, not colonial gatekeeping. Be ready to redistribute wealth, land, and resources, and understand that reconciliation may not happen in your lifetime, but your work matters now. Our favorite gal, Cindy Blackstock, said reconciliation is not about everyone holding hands. It's about holding governments, churches, and ourselves accountable. So let's do a little comparison. We're loving comparisons this episode. So a passive settler waits to be invited. An active ally seeks out learning. Mm-hmm. A passive settler shares posts. An active ally shows up in person. A passive settler stays silent. An active ally speaks out against injustice, even if it means creating an uncomfortable situation. Yep. You can leave the bar. You can leave your friend's house if they're being racist. That's okay. I've left many places because people are being racist. Yeah. A passive settler feels bad. An active ally redirects feelings into action. A passive settler asks for forgiveness, and an active ally focuses on accountability. And that brings us to the end of this episode and the end of our 6-part series, Residential Schools, Erasure, Resistance, Reckoning. We are deeply grateful to every survivor, knowledge keeper, and Indigenous voice whose work made this series possible.
Throughout these episodes, we have tried to hold space for the truth of this history, the weight of the harm, and the strength of resistance. We know this work doesn't end here. The story of residential schools is not something of the past. It lives on in the present. and it demands action in the future.
If you are Indigenous and need support, we encourage you to reach out. The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available 24/7 at 1-866-925-4419. You can also find culturally specific mental health support through the Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310 or online at hopeforwellness.ca.
And if you are a settler listener and you're wondering, what now? Here are a few places to start. As mentioned, payyourrent.com.
.ca.
Yes, it's Canada. Canadian Creepies.
Yeah.
Payyourrent.ca to learn about ongoing financial solidarity with Indigenous nations. Read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action and track what's actually been completed, because it's really not much.
Yeah.
And follow Indigenous writers, creators, organizations in your area. Learn whose land you live on and find out what justice looks like in that place. Because again, all the different nations have a different idea of what that looks like.
Yes. And reconciliation is not a destination, it's a responsibility. One that asks us to listen deeply, act with intention, and stay committed long after the headlines fade.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope that you carry these stories with you and that they move you to learn more, to do more, and to hold space for truth.
Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you to Kyle McDonald for editing and composing our theme song.